Jacob, welcome to the programme.
Hi, Sarah.
Now, that inquiry praised then Prime Minister Scott Morrison's decisiveness at the beginning of the pandemic and the unity of approach between the federal government and the states. But that broke down as time went on, it described. What were the consequences it found?
So this report was ordered by or requested by the government last year. There was some criticism at the time, Sarah, that the terms of reference would not be directly aimed at the actions of the states. Now, the authors, who are all respected experts in the economy, epidemiology, and also public policy, did look very much at the holistic element of this thing. And they found that one of the consequences, and the thing that they're really worried about, is that as the pandemic wore on, trust fell apart. And they blame some of the very harsh sort of measures that were taken, the lack of compassion, the inability of states to allow for special cases. And we'll all recall, you know, those examples of people who wanted to cross the border for funerals and things like that. So that led to, in the sort of wash up in the years that have passed, there's a lot of cynicism and mistrust of the institutions, of experts. There's conspiracy theories in the community, in some parts of the community. And the authors of the report are very worried about what happens next, the next time we have a pandemic, and there will be one, whether it's in 12 months, 10 years, or in our lifetime, after our lifetimes, there will be one. And they're saying that that will land on a very different community, not willing perhaps to do some of the things that they were willing to do 4 years ago, Sarah.
Now, so do they have any recommendations about how you combat that? Because you're talking about an erosion of trust over quite a long period of time with a lot of very different contributing factors. Have they grappled with how to confront that?
So I'd urge viewers to have a look at the report. It's very large. It's almost 900 pages, and it goes very much into how to respond in a broader sense to these challenges. Their big recommendation is the creation of a Centre for Disease Control. That would be a kind of central clearing station for information, rather than having a whole series of chief health officers around the country, sometimes providing competing advice. You have a central source that has the authority, that has the data, and hopefully, builds the kind of institutional trust that we have in some of our other big bodies, like the Reserve Bank, for instance. That would be the sort of model. There's a lot of material in there about the need to address misinformation, about how institutions should perhaps look at behavioural elements rather than just the heavy-handed stuff that we saw.
Let's talk about another issue of trust that's been in the public debate, in the public domain today. Trust in our politicians was being debated today over Anthony Albanese's relationship with Qantas. And just for anybody who's catching up, these follow allegations in Joe Aston's book that the Prime Minister personally solicited upgrades on flights from Alan Joyce, then the CEO of Qantas. Now, the PM was asked a very straight question at a press conference today. Let's listen to that.
Did you call Alan Joyce personally for these upgrades?
Look, the idea, Qantas have a number in terms of bookings that are made private bookings. And in terms of the only discussions that I can recall with Alan Joyce, certainly we discussed, not through calls, we discussed the first flight from Australia to Dubai on an A380. I might note as well that the Today Show, Sunrise, it was full of media. These were not commercial flights.
Jacob, now that was not a straight answer, was it?
Drowning, not waving was the sort of vibe I got from that. The Prime Minister is avoiding the direct question, which we heard that reporter put, which is, did he solicit these flights from the Chief Executive of Qantas? Remember, this is at a time when he was the Transport Minister and other times during the last few years, decade or so, and he's very keen to push the emphasis onto the broader question of these upgrades that politicians get, and more specifically, he's very keen to put the pressure on Peter Dutton, and whether Peter Dutton asked for flights from people like Gina Rinehart. Now, he wasn't the regulator for Gina Rinehart at the time, so it's a bit of a misdirect. But that's the sort of response he's giving us, Sarah, because he doesn't seem to have an answer for whether this passes the so-called pub test. And that's where we're at now. And it's another week for the Prime Minister. He's being forced to talk about things that he obviously would rather not. And it's starting to accrue, I think, out there in the public's mind that he's focused on the wrong things.
Now, you referenced there the fact that he wants to talk about the fact that lots of other politicians have taken upgrades, and that is indeed true. But as you say, he was the Transport Minister, and that's the key question here. Peter Dutton went a step further. He says the Prime Minister should refer himself to the Anti-Corruption Commission. How do you interpret what Peter Dutton is saying?
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister's clearly not going to do that. He's not going to take himself off to the copper and hand himself in. So that's not realistic. But it is sort of leading to this possibility that there will be more inquiries. Others will be asking for some kind of accounting. We're seeing that now from members of the crossbench. These are politicians who put high store in integrity, and so this is very much something they want explored. So the Prime Minister's not going to be able to wave this away. Dutton does need to come clear exactly about what he's suggesting here, why this would be justified, sending to this brand new institution, the Anti-Corruption Commission. I don't think Peter Dutton wants to set up a precedent where leaders are referring their political opponents to this brand new institution. So he's obviously not gone that far and said, I'll do it myself. But that's where we've got to, Sarah.
Jacob, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you.